Hey everybody, welcome back to Gideon Stuff and welcome to another episode of 3 Days In. Nope, wrong, this is not 3 days in, this is I EDC'd blank for 2 weeks. I'm an idiot, I can't believe I'm sorry guys, I'm sorry. But if you're watching this channel, you know at this point that I'm an idiot, but yeah, I EDC'd blank for 2 weeks, not 3 days in, This is one of my favorite series here on the channel. It seems to be pretty popular with you guys too. In this series, I take a certain knife or kind of knife and I carry it for 2 weeks and then give you my thoughts on the experience. And this time around, we were EDCing a micro knife. In this case, the Swiss Tech Winzig. You might have seen that I flipped that kind of goofy. That's because I cut my finger open the other day, last night, doing stuff for a video that hopefully you've already seen by this point, but it's right on the flipping part of my finger, and also a very hard spot to get a band-aid on. Every band-aid I put on this thing has just fallen off, so right now it's just kind of free. It's breathing the air, I guess. But this knife has a flipper and a pretty stout detint, and it's very, very uncomfortable on this finger, so middle finger flicking it is, I guess. Or I could do it with my left hand, except I don't have my tripod with me right now, so I'm filming with my left hand because I'm an idiot. Anyways, that's all besides the point. In this video, I carried a micro knife for 2 weeks straight. And this was requested by channel members, and this was a really fun experiment, and I can't wait to talk to you guys about it. Alright, so let's get into some of the rules, I guess, of I EDC'd blank for 2 weeks. I EDC'd this knife as my primary carry for 2 weeks, but that does not mean that this replaced every single knife in my life, or bladed tool, or whatever, right? So knives like this, small little blades, make great secondary knives. They are great companion pieces to your primary EDC. I carry small secondary knives all the time. That's great. But for the purposes of this video, this was my primary EDC knife. This was the only knife that I carried day to day. The other thing is, a lot of you guys know that I am an avid outdoorsman. I do a lot of camping and hiking and backpacking and stuff. So I carry a folding saw and fixed blade quite often. This knife is not replacing those knives. This knife is only expected to do things that I would do with my EDC knife. I do not use my EDC knife to baton wood or carve tent stakes or things like that, so I would not do that with this knife. I did not go on any camping trips while I was carrying this knife. I did go on a couple of hikes. And actually, funnily enough, this knife did climb to the top of a Sierra Blanca with me. So there's that. But that was before I started this 2 weeks experiment. But yeah, anything that I would do with my EDC knife, I do with this knife, or did with this knife for 2 weeks. So I'm not sure if I needed to do that explaining, but I figured I would for the uninitiated. Well guys, here we go. This is day 1 of EDCing only the Swiss Tech Winzig, this little tiny micro knife. Why am I doing this? Because I want to find out, is this enough edge length to get everything that I need to do in a day done? Now, right now, I am up north at my parents' place here on the ranch, and I'm heading back south to my place in the city. And so I'm going to be doing a lot of driving today, mostly, so I don't think this knife is going to get much use. But if I was trying to EDC only this knife here on the ranch, I don't think I'd be able to do it. This really is not enough blade length for a lot of these jobs. But it might be enough for my new urban lifestyle, so we'll see. Am I going to enjoy this experiment? Probably not. Probably not. I mean, there's nothing super wrong with this knife, but I feel like I'm going to feel like I'm lacking throughout the duration of this experiment. So, you know, we'll see. Okay, so before we get too far, let's introduce the SwissTech Winzig a little bit. This knife came in a holiday pack that SwissTech put out at the end of 2024. I have a full video on that holiday pack. If you're interested, I'll leave it linked in the description or in a card up here somewhere. You'll be able to find it. But this little knife has a blade that is just under 2 inches with about 1.5 inches of sharpened edge. And when I say micro knife, I decided that I would define micro knife as any knife that had a blade that was 2 inches or under. Now there are some novelty knives that are itty bitty tiny little guys. I wasn't even considering those because I think that's too gimmicky to really even be treated seriously. This is a knife that I think is a serious knife. This is a real knife, if you know what I mean. But it is still definitively micro. Blade steel on this is AUS 8. You can see it has a very rounded spear point, similar to things from like Wesson. This is not a copy of Wesson though, I don't think. Flipper action, bearings in the pivot, and this thing has a really good action. Centering is perfect, very well made knife. G10 scales, an aluminum backspacer that also doubles as a carabiner because this thing has no pocket clip. And that's not really going to factor in too much with this video, but I wish it had a pocket clip. That brings up another thing. This video here can kind of serve as a review of this knife, but if you guys are interested in seeing this thing get a standalone video dedicated to it, a standalone review, let me know and I will definitely make that happen because I definitely have a lot that I could say about this knife. Well guys, here we are, a few days in with the micro knife. Where am I carrying it? Right now, I've had it in the watch pocket. Break into a new flash drive. Storage is a very important thing for a YouTuber, and I'm always looking for new flash drives and other storage devices. So there we go. Alrighty guys, update. We made it to just over a week with the micro knife before disaster struck. A true calamity. I lost the damn thing. And I guess this is always a risk that you're gonna, or I don't know if I want to say risk, but I guess this is an obvious downside of tiny knives, is they're easy to misplace. Today would have been day 10 EDCing this knife, and somewhere between days 8 and 9 I misplaced it somewhere. I couldn't find it yesterday. I was kind of on a time crunch, so I just put a different knife in my pocket and went about my day. Couldn't find it today, so this weekend I will seriously try to look for whatever the heck I did with it. I imagine I just put it somewhere on my desk and it fell somewhere or something, but yeah, I guess that's one major downside of tiny objects. Although, this might not be an issue for people who are more organized than I am. So, there we go. Hey guys, guess what? I found it. I found the little bugger. He's at the bottom of my laundry basket. I'm assuming what happened was I took off a pair of pants and this was in the pocket, threw them in the laundry, this fell out of the pocket. Anyways, here it is. We can continue this experiment. I just got back from my first shift at work, using this guy to open up some stuff there. You know, pretty simple knife stuff. No trouble whatsoever. I'm going to eat some lunch and head back. And, yeah. Nothing else to say, really. Alright, I lied. I guess I'm not done talking right now. For lunch, I had leftover pizza. So, let's break down these boxes using the mini knife. And Let me show you how I'm carrying this thing today. These jeans do not have a watch pocket, as you might see. So, I'm doing the, clipped it on the belt loop method. Because this little guy's got a carabiner instead of a pocket clip. It is what it is, I guess. Let's go ahead and break into these boxes. This is going to be so fascinating. I know you guys have never ever seen anyone cut a cardboard box before, but here on the Getting Stuff channel, we're innovators. Don't eat my vegetables, or fruit in this case. There's not a whole lot of blade to work with, if you can't tell. Ouch! Ouch! It also might be time for this AUS-8 blade to get sharpened. I have not sharpened it yet. I've just been stropping it, or not stropping it, just honing it on a ceramic rod. Might be getting time for some actual work. Actually, I think it works better to just do the, to just pull straight through instead of doing diagonal cuts. I think that helps me to stay in the cut better. Yeah. Doing the strips is the way to go. And I'm not going to make you guys watch me do the rest of this, but there you go. Well guys, it's the last day EDC in this little tool. And I figured I'd go ahead and give it a day of my old EDC. Go feed the cows. I'll see how much of a hay bale cutter this turns out to be. Ugh. Rough riding old Dodge. They think we come bearing treats. No treats, girl. See? No treats. Well, that's going to be it for my 2 weeks carrying a micro knife. Today, as far as cutting the strings on the big bales go, it did all right. I know for a fact it would suck at trying to cut through the round bales. Could you imagine trying to cut round bale strings with this?
be bad.
It'd be hard. It'd be real difficult. But went pretty swimmingly the rest of the way. Good to do a little bit of cowboying every now and again. Ain't that right, dog? Alrighty, let's go ahead and get into my thoughts after performing this little experiment. Before I started carrying this knife, the question I wanted to answer was, can I get through my day-to-day with only this knife? And the answer for the most part, we'll get into caveats later, was yes. This knife did pretty much everything that I needed it to do on a day-to-day. Think about the things that you do every day, right? Opening packages, cutting a string, cutting a zip tie, things like this. Most of the work that I think a lot of people do with their pocket knife day-to-day are small, single-cut action jobs. And when you're doing a single cut through something, most of the time, you're not using that much of the edge. And so because of that, you can get through a lot of tasks with just 2 inches of edge. Less even. And so a lot of things that I did through my day-to-day was opening packages, cutting strings. I scrape a lot of stickers. You guys know I work in a natural history museum, so I scrape a lot of stickers, I open a lot of packages, things like that. And I could do everything with this knife. And speaking of my museum job, that brings up another big pro to carrying a small knife. It's non-threatening. Now this knife here's got kind of a Sith theme going on with the black and the red, which by the way I really love that color combo. But it's small and non-threatening. If this knife was bigger, it could be a little bit scary, right? And so a lot of times when I'm using my knife at work or around, you want to try and be a little bit discreet about it. And a lot of times at work, I'm in one of the back rooms, I'm in a storage room or something, I'm not out among the general public, but sometimes I am. And it's good to have something that's not going to scare people. And I already know there's some people watching this who might be thinking, well, you don't need to bow down to the sheep. Calm down, keep your pants on. I agree to a point, but also it's just a fact that some people are not comfortable with other people carrying knives. And a lot of that is not their fault, right? Media and lawmakers have done a great job in some areas making people think that pocket knives are dangerous weapons of mass destruction, which they're not, obviously. But I do want to be polite and conscientious about the people around me in my life. I don't want to scare people, right? And especially at my job at the museum, I need to be someone who's very approachable, who people can come and ask questions to. I work with kids a lot. I don't want to be a scary dude. So that's a big pro to carrying a small knife. The other thing is that it doesn't take up a lot of room, right? This knife here, you can drop into a pocket, a bag, you got the little clip, you can hang it on your keychain or something. It's unobtrusive, you're not even going to really notice it's there, and that can be a huge positive for some people. I'll bring up a negative about that later, a couple negatives in regards to that later, but that's definitely a pro. The next pro is that this could be a very legal-friendly option for a lot of people. If you live in an area that's super restrictive about blade length, having a knife that's less than 2 inches, for the most part, not a lawyer, don't take everything I say as law, but for the most part, less than 2 inches of blade is not going to get you in trouble in a lot of places. So if you're looking for a knife to carry, but you live in an area that's not knife friendly, you want to find a good option that's small. And you can find them, they're out there, and I don't think you're going to be sacrificing a whole lot of utility. Okay, let's talk about a couple of cons and some of the ways that this knife let me down during my carry. The first thing is, at a couple of points through my time with this knife, I had to break down some cardboard. I showed some footage of that. This is not the best knife for that because typically that's a job that requires a little more edge. You're using more of your blade. There's a quote from Lynn Thompson of Cold Steel fame. I believe it's him that said this. You guys can fact check me if I'm wrong, but he said, "A big knife can do everything a small knife can, but a small knife can't do everything a big knife can." I guess that's not a quote, I'm paraphrasing, but I agree with that. I think there is a lot of validity to that. Now again, a lot of everyday tasks that most people encounter in an urban environment, an urban setting, we'll get to that later, do not require more than 2 inches of edge. But some jobs do. If you're breaking down cardboard or such, you might need more edge. If you're carrying a knife that has a 3.5-inch blade, you're going to be able to break down cardboard and open Amazon packages. When you're carrying a knife that has 1.5 inches of edge, you're going to be able to open Amazon packages, but you're not going to be able to break down your recycling as effectively, right? And in some cases, you might just be unable to do it in general because that's not much edge to work with. The other thing is that this knife worked just fine for my current lifestyle, living in the city, working in academia, but this knife would absolutely fail if I was still working as a cowboy. Or, like I did on the last day up here, I came to visit my folks, and I used it a little bit around the ranch. This is not enough knife for a lot of those heavier duty tasks. So if that is you, if you are, like I used to be, mostly in a rural environment, out in the woods, on a ranch or something, probably not the knife that you need. Now this did fine, opening hay bales and stuff, but if I had to do anything else that I would normally do around the ranch, some of those jobs can require a little bit more blade and a little bit of a beefier knife to be general. In general, a little bit of a bigger, beefier knife. So for certain applications, this definitely is not going to be the knife for you. But again, for most urbanite EDC, I feel like this could get you through. Next thing, a couple of negatives with this. You can lose a micro knife very, very easily. This one almost went through the washing machine. I'm glad I found it before that happened. But that is a risk with a small object, is you can misplace it very easily. You can lose it. And losing your knife is never a fun thing. This knife doesn't have a pocket clip. I don't think a pocket clip would make it more or less likely to get lost. But I guess I figure I just mentioned that. So yeah, that's definitely a thing. And I did lose this knife for a while. So be warned, right? Keep track. Although, yeah, if you're more organized than me, that's probably not going to be a big issue for you. The other thing is that this could get you in legal trouble in some jurisdictions. I know I praised it for its legality, but now I'm going to say that it could get you in legal trouble. In my state, for example, and this is one of those laws that's on the books but doesn't really get enforced. Technically, you cannot carry any bladed object concealed on your person. So when I had this knife pocket dropped to the bottom of my pocket, that's technically illegal because it has to be visible to the public. Otherwise, I'm concealed carrying. And if you have a concealed carry permit, you're fine. But some states are like that. You have to have open carry. You have to have, people have to be able to see your knife. And that's a really, really silly law. This is not a dangerous object. But if I get pulled over and the cop doesn't like me and he asks me to empty out my pockets and I've got this in the bottom of my pocket, that's an excuse for him to throw a felony charge at me. And so I'm never a big fan of laws like that. That's a problem with the law, not these kind of knives. But, I figured I would just mention it. The other thing that I want to mention as kind of a negative with knives like this is that the smaller you make a knife, the more you sacrifice in the ergonomics department. And that's kind of a general law, right? The less you have to grab onto, the less comfortable it's going to be. Now, this knife is not uncomfortable, but it's not particularly comfortable either. And it works just fine for small cuts. I'm not really like trying to bear down or anything or whatever, but I wouldn't say this has the most secure grip ever. And so a lot of micro knives, a lot of smaller knives, if you've got bigger hands especially, they might actually be more difficult for you to use, which is another reason why blade length laws are kind of stupid. Because a guy who's 6'7" with hands the size of dinner plates probably shouldn't carry a knife like this because it might actually end up being a danger to him, right? He needs a knife that's bigger so he can get his hands around it. Now, of course, there are knives that exist that have big handles and tiny blades. There's a lot of California legal autos like that. And that's fine, go that route if you would like, I guess. But, if you have a small handle, you're definitely going to sacrifice ergos. And having a big handle to small blade, you're giving up ease of carry if that's something that you care about. So, things to think about. Just like everything in the EDC world or life in general, it's balance. It's give or take, right? So those are basically all the negatives I have to talk about. Let's go ahead and wrap up my final conclusions on this video. My final conclusions are that, 2 inches to 1.5 inches is enough edge to do way more tasks than I think most people give it credit for, right? You don't always need 3.5 inches of knife. And I probably am not going to do this ever again, right? Carry a tiny knife like this just because, typically larger knives appeal to me more. And I do things that require larger knives quite a bit. But I could if I had to, right? If tomorrow I was told you can only carry the Swiss Tech Winzig for the rest of your life, I could probably scrape by, right? You just have to get a little bit creative in some ways. But this was a really, really fun video. I do like this knife, by the way. I should have mentioned this earlier, but I like to carry secondary knives, like fifth pocket knives. Those are great to have on you as well. So if you've got like a main knife, you can also have, maybe a more people-friendly knife as a backup, or a loaner knife to if someone asks if they can use your knife, you give them that one. I do carry smaller knives like this as backups quite often, and I will continue to do that with this knife probably. But as far as a main EDC, as far as my primary blade goes, I was able to do a lot with it, a lot more than some people might expect, but I'm probably not going to do it again. And that's where I'm going to leave you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. Big shout out to my channel members right here at the Cowboy level. If you want to become a channel member and get access to exclusive perks, there's a button down below where you can join. I really appreciate it. As for the rest of you weirdos, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment below, and subscribe, and share it. That helps a lot. You have no idea how much that helps. But I've been Gideon, and I'll see you in the next video.